Excellent. Before I do that, we're fortunate tonight to have one of our teachers attend with the reunion, and he's sitting in the back of the room, Mr. Gert, a.k.a. Grit, because when he was a young lad, he sold the Grit newspapers. You used to see in the back of Popular Science and Popular Mechanics, a.k.a. Gertie, which the guys down at the restaurant call him. The Russ is here tonight, so if you haven't taken the time, I certainly hope that everybody will at least stop by and say hello to him, because that's the reason he was here. I was hoping that Mr. Curtis would be here, but when I called this afternoon to see if he was going to make it, there was no answer to the phone, so he didn't make it. And the only other teacher that I can think of, at least in Cortland, that we had that still is living around here is Lauren Hopkins, but I didn't think about him until yesterday, so I didn't get a chance to talk to him. I'm sure he would have been here. I know Jim tried to call Mr. Kovacs, but he also never got a response, so at least we have one of our teachers, and he's still kicking. And I certainly hope everybody will stop by and say hello to him. As Lorraine said, we've lost 11.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Oh, I guess it is. Yeah. We've lost 11 classmates over the years, and it's only fitting that we take the time to at least remember them, because it's really easy to sit here and talk with the people that you see and talk about the good old times and what you've been doing for the past 50 years, but it's very unfortunate these people can't be with us. And many of them probably would be here if they could. The first classmate we lost was Frances DeLeo. She died in 1983 at a very young age. She had been married to Tom Twitchell. She had a son and a daughter, and she worked at the famous Nichols 5 and 10 store in Main Street, Cortland. But she was the first one to die, and she was only, probably 38 years old, very young. We then went 13 years before we lost our second one, and it was Ira Parker. And unfortunately, he died in 1996, but I wasn't able to get any information on him at all. So I really don't have anything else I can tell you.
I worked with Thomas Steele there, and something in the mechanical department. He passed away. I was working with him.
Is that right? Well, at least that's good to know, because we couldn't find anything. I had no idea who to contact either.
Sounded just like Ira. When I first started working there and heard that voice,
We then went two more years, and we lost two more classmates. The first one was Walter Kellerman in February of 1998. He died as complications of an automobile accident, very unfortunate. He was married to Mary Ann Newton. They had two sons, and like a lot of us in here, Walter worked at Packard Electric, enjoyed auto racing, and surprisingly, computers. Later that year, we lost what I consider to be one of our class clowns and Mr. Mischief. Dick Corder unfortunately passed away. He was a U.S. Marine veteran, worked in construction after getting out of the Marines around the country, because the last time I talked to Dick, in the late 80s, he was living in Idaho. He then moved to, I believe, South Carolina, and then down to Florida where his mother was living. And he died in 1998 in Florida, and he's brought back up here and was buried down in Hillside Cemetery. And there's probably a lot of Dick Corder stories could go around here tonight. Trust me, I know some of them myself. We then went 4 years, and unfortunately we lost Joe Williams. Joe had been married to Betty Theory, and they had moved to North Carolina. He worked in construction, correct? He was a contractor, like his dad. And they say they had 2 daughters and 2 sons, all of which still live around Betty, I believe. And 5 grandchildren. Oh, it's up to 7 now? Well, the obituary only said 5, so there was some added sense. Okay. Then in 2004, we lost Terry Marsh. Terry died from complications of surgery. And he was married and he had 1 son. As soon as he got out of college, Terry was a basketball coach at several local high schools and a track official. And then he became very active in the Howland Community Community Church, and then went on to become a minister himself. And at the time of his dying, he was a senior pastor at the First Christian Church in Mansfield, Ohio. And then we go 3 more years, and we lost 2 more classmates, and I believe they were stepsister and stepbrother. First was Pat Boyd. Pat was in the Army after graduating from high school, where she met her future husband. They moved to Minnesota, and they were living in Chisholm, Minnesota, and that's not the end of the Chisholm Trail, because that ended in Kansas. But they were living in Chisholm, Minnesota. She had 2 sons and a daughter, and I did talk to her son Dan, and I was hoping that he would send her an obituary, but he probably must not be able to find it, so we never got anything to put in the book. Later that same year, Larry Parker, although Larry didn't graduate with us, he started in the 1st grade and was with us all through school. Larry was a U.S. Army veteran, had 2 tours of duty in Vietnam. He was married with 2 sons and a daughter, and 11 grandchildren and 1 great-grandson. Larry worked at Packer Electric for 30-plus years, and after he retired, for his enjoyment of golf, he worked at Tamara Wynn. And then we went to 2011, we lost Patty Buren King. Patty got married shortly after graduating from high school, and she lived most of her life in Syracuse, New York. I'm not too sure what her husband did. She had 7 children and 13 grandchildren. She was living in Vienna, I believe, at the time of her death. They moved back to Ohio. Then we come to this year, we lost 2 more. The first was Joanne Sharp in February, and I was fortunate to see it in the paper, and I let everybody know. But Joanne also was in the Army after graduating from high school. She worked at Ohio Lamp for 30-plus years, and she had 4 sons and 8 grandchildren. Oh, I forgot to say, Pat Buren had 7 children and 13 grandchildren. And the last one that we just lost here in April, towards the end of April, and it was a shock to all of us. Charles Martin was one of the first ones to send his reservation in for the class reunion, and he was really looking forward to being there. Charles died complications of surgery, heart surgery. He was a Navy veteran and very active in the Air Force Reserve for many years. He was also married, had 2 sons and 2 daughters, and 7 grandchildren. And like so many others of us, he worked at Packer Electric. And tonight, his girlfriend is here because Charles was planning on bringing Dolores Logan. Where is she? Where is she? Why don't you stand up? And even though Charles couldn't be with us, she called Shirley about a month and a half ago and just talking to her, and we made sure she attended. And she also brought Dolores Logan. So at this time, I think it would be very nice if we take a moment of silence to remember those that have gone before us. Okay. We're going to finish up here pretty quickly. I got a few announcements I want to make. Tomorrow, some activities for tomorrow. At 10:30, there's a plan to take a tour through the high school. It's a self-guided tour, I understand. So you're free to roam around wherever you want to, within limits, I guess. And probably for a lot of you that have not been back since the day we graduated, I think you're going to be a bit surprised when you get up there. I think you'll be just a tad bit surprised. So if you can, probably if it's planned for 10:30, why don't you try and be there by 10:15?